Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, Department of State Services confirms arrest and detention of presidential candidate of the Action Alliance Party, Omoyele Sowore, over alleged treasonable felony. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka and human rights lawyer Femi Falana condemned the arrest of Mr. Omoyele Sowore over alleged threat to national security. Members of the coalition of northern groups dissociate self from planned nationwide revolution protests. And U.S. President Donald Trump condemns Texas killing, describes it as an act of cowardice. The Department of State Services, the DSS, has confirmed the arrest and detention of publisher of the online news magazine Sahara Reporters and the presidential candidate of the Action Alliance, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, for allegedly threatening national security. Spokesman of the DSS, Mr. Peter Afunaya, stated this at a news conference in Abuja today, but declined comments as to whether or not Mr. Sowore is in detention facility of the DSS in Lagos or Abuja. According to him, the DSS is acting within its constitutional powers to arrest and detain anybody or group who threatens the unity and peaceful coexistence of Nigeria.
The DSS would not just sit by and watch someone or his groups or cohorts would want to rise and threaten the peace, unity, constitutionalism of our beloved country. Whether Sowore is with the DSS or not, the answer is emphatic, is in the affirmative. Yes, he's with us. And why is he with us? He has crossed the lines. He has threatened public safety. Sowore has, as a matter of fact, threatened the peaceful coexistence, social harmony of Nigeria. There is no doubt that Sowore has said by himself that come tomorrow, there won't be Nigeria. That come tomorrow, that security services and institutions of government will cease to exist. What else do you want us to have other than what he by himself has pronounced and the methodologies, the strategies, the processes that he has put in place? And of course, put in the public domain, in the social media, which is a public information harvest platform. Every person is aware of his threat. And what we are emphasizing again is that we will act within the law. We act within democratic processes and procedures to ensure that whatever threat that he has given, he or any group of persons, his cohorts, or any person from anywhere, we are aware that he's also working with some persons outside Nigeria to cause disaffection, to cause chaos, to cause anarchy in the country. And we will not stand by and watch that happen.
Meanwhile, Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka has condemned Mr. Sowore's arrest. The Nobel laureate made this known in a statement which reads, "Deployment of alarmist expressions such as treason, anarchist, public incitement, etc. by security forces have become so predictable and banal that they have become meaningless. Nothing that Sowore has uttered, written, or advocated suggests that he is embarking on or urging the public to engage in a forceful overthrow of government." Professor Soyinka asked the police to stick to its task of protecting and managing protests and not attempt to place their own meaning and declaration of intent on words like revolution. Staying with the matter, human rights lawyer Femi Falana is also condemning the arrest of Mr. Sowore. He says it is worrisome that the federal government has decided to extend the ambit of the Terrorism Prevention Amendment Act to cover individuals and organizations that are critical of official policies or perceived marginalization within the Federation. The senior lawyer said this in a statement condemning the arrest of Mr. Omoyele Sowore by the Department of State Services. His statement reads, It is crystal clear that the organizers of the peaceful rallies cannot be said to have planned to engage in acts of terrorism or formed an intention to remove President Muhammadu Buhari from office. Mr. Falana says it is high time the federal government stop the security agencies from further exposing Nigeria to ridicule in the Committee of Civilized Nations. In a related development, members of the coalition of northern groups insist they will not be taking part in the planned nationwide revolution protest scheduled for Monday, August 5th. The coalition also wants the organizers not to draw the country into unnecessary and avoidable tension and anarchy because of their selfish ambitions. Addressing a press conference in Kaduna, spokesperson for the group, Abdulaziz Sulaiman, says every civil disagreement can be resolved through honest and open discussions without unnecessary recourse to violent action.
But we know the CNG is not disposed to participating in, supporting, encouraging, or in any way promoting actions that are potentially violent, sponsored by obscure organizations with suspicious motives. 4, we have failed to see how the interest of particularly the northern people can be served by a movement led by those who have been directly or remotely connected to the decades-old agenda for the emasculation of the North. Number 5, the CNG calls on all Northerners to disregard the calls and resist the temptation of being dragged into participating in any way in a movement that would turn out to the disadvantage of the region. While the CNG categorically dissociates itself from the organization, promotion, and participation in any conduct capable of worsening the already dicey situation in the country, in particular the North, the already dicey situation in which the country, in particular the North, is in today. We reassert our commitment to the propagation and protection of the rights of all Northerners, and never to fall into the traps set by its traditional internal and external traducers in whatever guise.
The federal government has responded to tomorrow's protests, calling on the organizers of what is called Revolution March tomorrow to come forward and identify themselves. The government says the organizers under the name Global Coalition for Security and Democracy in Nigeria should go the extra length of making their identity known. The federal government, in a statement by one of the spokespersons to the president, Mr. Garba Shehu, says the organization championing this planned action is not fronted by any serious public faces. They call on the sponsors and organizers to have the decency to come forward and make their identity known out of respect to all Nigerians, so that Nigerians can be fully aware in whose name this revolution is being proposed and who the beneficiaries may be. The statement adds that the government will not in any way infringe on the rights of Nigerians to hold a peaceful protest, but is wary of the incitement the planned march is generating. The government is accusing the organizers of the planned protest of hiding behind everyday citizens to attain power through undemocratic and violent means. Joining us now on the News at 10 is legal practitioner Mr. Efa Otuoka. Is in our studio in Abuja. Mr. Otuoka, thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
Let's look at the what the DSS has said. They're keeping Mr. Sowore because of what they say are treasonable actions, the border on treasonable felony. What is the position of the law on this? What really constitutes treasonable felony in Nigeria?
Well, Section 41 of the Criminal Code actually defines what treasonable felony amounts to. And one of its definition is where someone or a group of people put an intention together to remove a democratically elected president before the term of his office expires, or where they seek to remove a governor before the term of his office expires through unconstitutional means. It also, one of the definitions of treasonable felony also includes an attempt to use force or coercion to make the president change counsel or change policies that would suit their intention. And to that extent, taking also in the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as to freedom of expression, it is neither here nor there, and depends on perception, depends on how a reasonable man would interpret the actions of Mr. Sowore and those who are agitating for the revolution. I guess where the problem comes in is with the use of the word revolution, because no matter how you look at that word, its intention is for a forceful overthrow of government. And the criminal code in section 41 makes it clear that where you intend to use force to compel a change of government, it amounts to treasonable felony, no matter how you want to look at it.
Okay, so the DSS also cites the need to protect the nation's unity. Do you think this planned protest could have any impact on the nation's unity, considering all the groups have been reacting to it?
Certainly not. Certainly not. Certainly not. Our Constitution gives us Nigerians the right to peaceful assembly. So far, from statements read, I have not seen the video from Mr. Sowore. I've only read comments and statements from some of these organizations calling on Nigerians to come out and ask government to look into the complaints of the average Nigerian on the street. The average Nigerian on the street is hungry. The average Nigerian on the street is oppressed. The average Nigerian on the street sees injustice staring her in the face. And people have decided to come out and hold government accountable to her core responsibilities, and which is the protection of lives and properties. We all know that that has been at its lowest ebb. Although government wants us to believe that they've been doing their best, we pray that is true, but Nigerians have a right to express their displeasure where they believe that the government they elected to protect them, to provide for them, is not doing what it's meant to do.
If I'm hearing you correctly, then this is just another anti-government protest, but it appears the government sees, some potential of this turning violent, perhaps, or people misinterpreting the purpose of a protest like this.
Now, the Nigerian police force, our courts have given judgment to that effect, that where citizens have intent to protest or express their displeasures to policies of government, that the duty of the police force is to guard against the breakdown of law and order. Now, the DSS, the police, and the government of the day would not be in the minds and the hearts of Nigerians to know that the protest would turn violent. Now, when citizens see law enforcement agents, an average citizen will want to abide by the law. And I don't think there's any need or the fear that the protest would turn violent. Right. I don't think there's any basis for that. In my opinion, I don't think there's a basis for that.
Mr. Oka, I appreciate your thoughts and your analysis on the issue tonight. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Mr. Ifa Oka is a legal practitioner. We have more reactions now to the planned protest tomorrow and the detention of Mr. Omoyele Sowore by the Department of State Services. The human rights lawyer, Mr. Mike Ozekome, has expressed his thoughts on the issue. He says the rights of Mr. Sowore are being violated. Senior lawyer who appeared on our political program, Sunday Politics, says the action of the DSS is not only unconstitutional, but immoral.
it is unconstitutional, it's even immoral. And I'm going to state why it is immoral. It violates his constitutional rights to freedom of expression as provided for in Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, his right to freedom of assembly and association as provided for in Section 40 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What has Sowore done with the man you just showed on the video? They term it, they use the word revolution now. The term revolution now. I know that, yes, by the definition of the word revolution, it connotes insurrection, overthrow, kind of maybe making an attempt to instigate, to overhaul. But in law, there's what we call the mens rea of an offense and the actus reus of that offense.
In part two, after the break, Ebonyi State government calls for investigation into the killing of Benjamin Simeon in South Africa. Please join us again.